Hi and welcome back to the show. With me now is Nancy Whittingham, who is a local healthcare provider, but she also has had some interesting personal challenges in the area of elder care. As I said in the opening, she's in the process of breaking new ground and revolutionizing for Elgin County and beyond the process of caring for our elderly. Welcome to the show, Nancy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a
All
pleasure
right.
to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. I think we have some great information to talk about. Tell the viewers, tell me, how did you become interested in the area of elder care?
Well, originally, because of my healthcare providing background, I would follow some clients into a long-term care facility when they transitioned into there. And then back in '07, it was a personal journey with my mom, providing elder care for her and seeing her through the transition years as she developed dementia.
Okay. And how has that experience, that personal experience, shaped your view of how we do elder care in this society?
Well, I guess to explain that my mother had made a conscious choice a number of years ago. She had a chronic rheumatoid arthritis condition, and she chose to use an integrative medical model, meaning traditional allopathic treatment and complementary care. And so when she went into her elderly years, she continued to use that model. And so when she went into an elder care facility, we as a family chose to advocate for her in that way.
Okay. And obviously there's more to talk about that. We'll come back to it if we have time, because I think that there's an amazing story there. So that said, for people who are going through the same process and that same journey, in your opinion, what are a few important aspects of what people should be aware of and what they should follow through with?
I think some of the biggest things is having information. Wendy previously gave some great information about Alzheimer's. I think that some of the important aspects is to have a conversation with your family members prior to elderly years and their health care possibly deteriorating as they age. Know what your family member really wants, have those conversations so that as you advocate for them, and advocacy is a huge part of it, that you know what their needs are. I think some of the other really important aspects are knowing about informed consent for medications, to establish things like power of attorney status before there is a need for that, and you have that on board, and there's power of attorney status for both personal care and for finances, so that if you happen to become a substitute decision maker for your family member in especially a long-term care facility, that you have that power of attorney status already set up.
Okay, I just want to ask you a couple of things about that. So you had mentioned the people who are going to be caring for their relatives, but I think probably I've mentioned in 2011, this is the first year that baby boomers are turning 65. It's probably very relevant for people in that age group to make these plans and talk to their young children about it as well, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. You don't have to wait until you are in your 70s or 80s to have these conversations. I think to be proactive and have conversations prior to is really essential. Because many times, as Wendy was saying, things like dementia can be a progressive situation, but sometimes there's a crisis situation where a family member falls and fractures something. They go into the hospital. It can create a whole cascade of events that happen. They might not be able to come home and be living independently, and so they may have to go into a long-term care facility either temporarily or for the longer term. And so to have proactive strategies in place, to have great communication and know what things to put into place is essential.
Okay. The other thing that you mentioned was informed consent. And for you and I as healthcare providers, that's something that, we know what that means. For the average person, can you kind of break it down for them? What does informed consent mean, especially in this case?
Well, informed consent for everybody, it's a basic premise that the Supreme Court of Canada has laid out to protect the autonomy of the individual. That basically any healthcare provider that's covered under the RHPA, the Regulated Health Professions Act, you have to provide informed consent to describe what treatment you're going to suggest to that person, the benefits of that, the possible side effects and contraindications, so that someone can make an informed choice, either that individual or their substitute decision maker if it's for an elderly person. But that's across the board. Anybody at any time with any healthcare provider, there should be informed consent given for any treatment, any medication, any potential test or surgery that's to be done. You have to give that information so that someone can make that informed choice and possibly research out some more information before they make that choice.
Yeah, this is a big part of what I've talked about a lot about on the show, which is taking control of your health, or as you say, a substitute decision maker, helping your elder relative take control of their health, making sure that you, if you're not sure what's going to happen, ask questions. So amazing
Asking questions is so important, and sometimes, you know, the information is very forthcoming. Sometimes there might be the person that you're asking the question of won't have the information and they can come back to you with it. And sometimes you may meet some resistance in some of the questions that you might be asking. And that's the important part, especially in the elder care role, of being an advocate for your elderly person, family member that might not be in a cognitive state to make those decisions themselves. And that's where you or your family team become the substitute decision maker.
Right. Okay, from your experiences, can you share the differences between elder care at home and in a long-term care facility?
Sure. Once again, it's usually a progressive situation, and so someone who's living independently and then might need a little bit of help at home, sometimes they may move in with a family member, and then certain circumstances might come into play where they go into a long-term care facility situation. From my personal experience, what I would say the difference is, going into a long-term care facility, I believe people need to recognize that it is an institutional setting and that there's certain responsibilities that the institution is mindful of. Their responsibilities for care and liability, the health and wellness, but also respecting the person's autonomy and right to make choices. So some of the autonomy in my experience or my family's experience is decreased when you go into a long-term care facility, especially with some of the decision making around healthcare decisions. That at home, if you want to do something, you go to your doctor, you get the advice of the doctor, you can choose to follow that advice or not. In a long-term care facility, sometimes that can be a little bit muddled. I would say that, and especially I guess in our situation because of the integrative medical model, and that's what I'd like to talk about a little bit more. That's where my passion comes from my personal experience and my long-term studying and involvement in natural health care, is that when you go into a long-term care facility and someone like my mother's example where we were using an integrative medical model, there became some challenges there, which you wouldn't necessarily have at home. My mother made her choices at home with the advice of her healthcare team, her medical doctor, her naturopathic doctor, her other complementary care practitioners. And some of that autonomy was lost in a long-term care facility. There's great professionals that work in elder care. I need to say that. And in a home situation versus long-term care facility, sometimes the situation at home becomes so overwhelming for the caregivers that to move to a long-term care facility, it provides more life balance, and it might be the safer choice for that elder person depending on their physical situation and their cognitive situation, if they're developing especially aspects of different forms of dementia.
Okay. I think that we have tons to talk about on that, definitely, but we will have it on the website, more information, so if you're looking for that, by all means, go there. To finish up today, can you give us some tips or strategies for people in terms of resources that they can use if they are approaching this time of life, either themselves or for a family member?
Sure. One of the biggest resources is there's so much information out on the internet. Talk to families and friends. Talk to other professionals in other areas. Resources like what Wendy was talking about with the Alzheimer's Society, if there is an aspect of dementia or Alzheimer's. I think one of the biggest pieces when you start to look into venturing into long-term care is the gateway into that is the community care access centers. So CCAC, that's how you get into the whole process of looking at possibilities for long-term care facilities. Ministry of Health, there's an advocacy center for the elderly, Senior Healthy Aging Resource Environment Society, and also places like your local hospital. St. Thomas Elgin General has a resource list of home care providers that provide a variety of services if you're heading back into a home care situation.
Okay, really great information, and we will review those on the website. Thanks so much for being with us, Nancy.
Thank you.
All right, thanks again to Wendy Francis and to Nancy Whittingham. We're going to finish off quickly with our amazing health fact of the day. The ultimate computer, your brain, is capable of performing 10 quadrillion calculations per second using only 10 watts of power. So think about a 100-watt light bulb, only a tenth of that power will run your whole brain. Your body is an amazing machine. Make sure that you take care of it. I'm Dr. Peggy Malone, and until I see you next time, live well.